everybody, welcome to the channel. I want to say a big hello to all the new subs. What I'm going to be doing today is one of my, I guess, more controversial mechanical things that I do to engines. To me it's not, but in my last video on the one that I showed that I've done, and I've done this, I'll call it conversion to several of these particular motors. A lot of people say it's very unnecessary and so forth, and that if the engine's being operated correctly or if it's tuned correctly, you don't need to do it. For me, I personally like it, and it's nothing that I invented or created. It's simply an option that was available, and what I'm talking about is the Mercury tiller shift. So the Mariner version of this motor, this particular motor, had a side shift lever. And the Mercury, unless you went up to the C Pro version, had the tiller shift in the handle. At least that's what I understand. But I've had many of these tiller shift MERCs come in here. They make them in both 4-stroke and 2-stroke, and I know that because I just finished up a 4-stroke, just doing a tune-up for a fella. And this one happens to be a 2-stroke, and all I'm doing is shifting it over to the Mariner version, which has the side shift, and your throttle is separate from any shift mechanism. So I've done half dozen of these or so for people. This is not my engine. This was a customer who had saw an engine that I did. And he brought his in and said, could you make mine to where it shifts from the side? His reasoning was that he kept accidentally popping it into reverse when he was trying to go back to neutral. He said he would be in the throttle up mode, and he would go to back off the throttle, and when it would click and go into neutral, he would often shift it into reverse, and he didn't like that. He said it was just something he wasn't used to, and he preferred the side shift. And so he's the customer. He asked me to do it, and I will do what the customer wants. So I'm going to shift this over and convert it, switch it over to the Mariner version of this motor, and I will build a shift handle and everything. And I'm going to take the recoil starter off, the carburetor off, and stuff like that, just to get access to the little shift stub and then I'll have to create a shift handle and everything and make it out of whatever I have available, and I'll show you what I use and so forth. And so I'm going to show you the little engine in question. Here it is. Let me spin you around. Alrighty. There she is. And as you can see, there's a rubber access port right there. So that's where the shift handle goes. There is a stub down here that will allow me to make a shift handle. Let me get you off here. There's the little stub. And if you watch, when I use the tiller shift, that's what I have to adapt to. Then I'll have to block and put some kind of stop here so it won't go into reverse, but yet I'll have to keep the cable and everything so it operates the throttle bell crank. So I'm going to get all this, the carburetor, pull start and stuff out of my way. Then I'll come up with a shift lever. Then I'll put it on there. Then he'll have a throttle that works and a shift lever on the side, as per the owner's request. So that's what I'm going to do. And let me get all this stuff out of the way, and I'll come back. I'm not going to bore you with taking off the carburetor and the pull start. That's straightforward stuff there. Carburetor, you just unhook the two nuts, then you take out a couple screws. This all can stay there, the primer actuator. Then I'll unhook the mag advance and a couple other little things, and that'll give me more room to work in there. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I got the carb off. I took the side linkage that comes off as one piece. There's a rod that goes from right there in that hole back to that shift linkage right there, and I removed that. That would be that rod right there. And then I took the throttle bell crank off. And so once you remove things out of your way, the recoil, the carb, and all that, there's what I'm after. And you can see the end of that's threaded. So you got a couple of options. I can rig something up that'll bolt to that, and then I can weld to that coming up. So I'll just have to see what I'm gonna do. There's a treasure. What is that? Well, it's just a blob of grease. Not the worst thing to find in there. So that's what it looks like. There's that stub. Same stub you can see from in there. And that's where our shift handle, that would be like where the Mariner shift handle goes. So I have to look around, see what I'm going to come up with and use for a shift handle, or what kind of shift handles I got. So let me see what I can find. But I took the carburetor off, and here's your little primer magneto advance wire. Move that out of the way. Your whole primer system mechanism stays as one unit. Don't take any of them springs or anything off. The carburetor's tough to get out of there. It's tight, but it will come out of there. So got that off, everything out of our way, and now we got room to work with all this. So let me get something together and see what I'm going to come up with, and I'll be right back. Okay, now what I've done is the shift handle, that little nub that was sticking out, you can see I removed that. And to do that, you come over to this side of the engine, side that the tiller's on, and you see that little plastic clip right in there. Well, you just take something and lift that. I'm gonna try and do this. If I can get some flashlight in there. All right, so you just lift that up. Then that allows that shift mechanism to come out. And there it is. And so now what I've decided to do is drill a hole right through that. And I'll show you that when I get done. And then I'll take this socket, which I've already drilled a hole in. I went over to my drill press right there, drilled that hole. It will go on the socket like so, and I'll put a nut and a bolt through that. Once I drill the hole, I'll use the socket to mark it. The socket being made of steel gives me something to weld, something like this, a handle to, with a knob. That's what I'm after. And so I'm gonna go over to the drill press. I'll drill that hole. When this gets all put together, I'll show it to you. I'll be right back. Okay, you can see the socket right there. You can see I drilled through everything. I put a rubber washer right there just to take up any slack so it's nice and solid and cushioned and all. You can see the screw going through everything, and I'll come up from the bottom and put a nylock on there. Here's the shift handle, which is simply a bolt with the head cut off of it. All right, and I kind of tapered the end a little bit on my bench grinder. That will go in there about like that. And I will weld that in that position, which is the neutral position. To that, I will add this threaded knob that I got off an old Mercury shifter. Such as that, it just threads in there like so. I may put a piece of hose over all of this bolt, piece of black fuel hose, so you don't see the bolt and it looks a little better. But that's where I'm going. So let me get everything apart there. I'll lay out all the pieces where you can see it, and then I'll weld it up. Be right back. All right, there are the pieces for the whole thing. Here's where the little plastic clip goes on the left side of the engine, or the tiller side of the engine. Here's just a little rubber washer I put. You can see I drill a hole through that little nub. I drilled a hole through the socket. So you can see that. 1/2 inch socket. That goes in there. The holes line up. There's the screw, the nylock. Here's the shift handle. It will go in there and I will weld it in position. All that will then go back into its position and you'll have a shift handle. So those are the pieces, and I will build up a weld around that and center it and weld it center for the neutral position. So let me get to welding and we'll go from there. Be right back. Okay, I got everything all buttoned back up, put on, and this is the finished setup. If you notice now, I can go this way to give it gas, but I cannot go that way. I line these two lines up, and so what stops me from going clockwise with the throttle now, as if I was going to shift in reverse with the old tiller system, is this right here. I didn't paint it yet so that you could see it. You see this? This is a square nut, 1/2 inch square nut, and the only part other than the shift handle that I had to build, which by the way you can buy the shift handle, you don't have to build it, and I'll show you that in a minute. So this is really the only thing you have to change on this engine, is you put something to use for a stop, and I've always used these 1/2 inch square nuts, and then this bolt right here, which is one of these bolts, you have to replace that with a 1/2 inch longer is all, and I'll show you the original bolt. The only part that you have to remove is this rod that would actuate the reverse throttle, but that stops it. That's your stop that I was talking about. So I can go forward, but when I come back, boom, right there it hits. So it hits right there, and that stops it. So it can't go the other way now. It can only go counterclockwise on the tiller. So when I turn it this way, I throttle up, and then when I turn it that way, I can't go no more because of that stop. So there's your shift rod.
And I've had people say, you know, this mod is unsafe and all this. Well, the deal is, this is not a mod, really. This is basically a Mercury Mariner design. That's why they had this rubber plug in here, is because this pan is used on both the Mariner and the Mercury, depending on what color paint jobs and what they're producing that day. So I took a punched a 1/2 inch hole in the rubber insert there, took off the knob, fed it down through, put the rubber plug back in its place. So that's all sealed up now, and it shifts just fine. And why I say that if you consider this some kind of unsafe conversion, I'll show you that it not according to Mercury and Mariner. So that's the complete done version right there. Now it has a shift handle. The only two parts that you need to remove to do this conversion are this throttle advance for when you would put it in reverse with the tiller operation, and this bolt here you need to make a 1/2 inch longer so that you can put that 1/2 inch square nut there for the stop. That's the only two parts that you take off. The only part that you add is a shift handle and the square nut stop. That's it. That's the whole deal. And then a shift handle. Now I made my own. I just did that because I had stuff laying around that makes an acceptable shift handle. And the owner will be fine with that. He's already told me that. Now, and it's a lot cheaper than buying the plastic one. And the reason why I say this design is not hokey or unacceptable or safe is, if you notice I'm in neutral, I can pull the engine over. If I shift into gear, I cannot. If I shift into reverse, I cannot. The safety interlocks that come with this engine are still all in place and function perfectly, just the way they were designed. And you say, well, that wasn't how it was designed a little while ago. It was designed with that tiller handle. Well, then you would have to explain me this. What is that right there? That is a shift handle. Is this engine unsafe? I don't think so. It doesn't turn clockwise. It only goes counterclockwise because it has a shift handle. There is the black plastic shift handle you can buy. So this is the C Pro Series 15. Okay. Oh, see if they both fit. Nope. So, there they are. But if you look at the motors, and if you look at the throttles, now I put my stop back here on that other engine just because of the way it was set up. But you can see, here's their nut and spacer for their stop. It hits right there, boom, and stops. So here is where I built a shift rod using that socket, the bolt, and the ball. But you can purchase this shift rod. All right, all the safety interlock still works the same. Everything still works the same. The only difference is this engine can be started, and when you start it, you can rev it up, run. So there you go. So I don't believe by adding a shift handle, you are making this engine unsafe in any way, shape, or form. In fact, if you look at many other outboards, that's a Tohatsu. There's a shift handle. I don't think that's an unsafe engine. As I say, all the safety interlocks that came with this engine are still operable on this engine. It's no different. This engine, the only difference is now I can start it and rev the engine. And I'll show you that here in a second when I put it in the tank. So Let me get her set up, get her in the tank, and we'll fire it up. Quite acceptable to me. Both kill switches still work. So, there it is. So, is that a mod? No. I would say it's just a conversion. Converting it from the tiller shift to the C-Pro shift. Same thing, only different. Your choice, but more importantly to me, it was the customer's choice. So, thanks for watching.